there's nothing right now to write about. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and they got to grind out a Tennessee Volunteers column every day now, you know. So anyway, here we go, Jerry Bonkowski. Well, Jerry Bonkowski was at, in my opinion, the race of the silly season yesterday, where Kyle Busch first got knocked out of the way by his opponent, and then knocked him out of the way. Talking about, of course, Larson here. But anyhow, Jerry Bonkowski was at the race. By the way, I'm Marky Billson, Tri-City Sports Now. And amazingly, I was just talking to you off the air here, I thought it was one of the greatest finishes I have ever seen to a NASCAR race. You're not that high on it. I mean, to me, this is Bobby Thompson, this is Bill Mazeroski, this is Aaron Boone. What could you possibly have thought fell short in the ending of the Busch victory yesterday?
Well, let me try to explain it. And I've written about this many times over the years, and maybe you'll see where I'm coming from after how I explain it. I thought it was a good finish, but the one thing I always have a problem with is when there is intentional contact. And, you know, when Kyle Larson put Kyle Busch to the wall, that, you know, you can kind of draw a line saying, well, that was racing. But when Kyle Busch came back and intentionally hit Kyle Larson in the rear, that is where I draw the line at. And, you know, what would have happened if Kyle Larson, you know, after being punted, would have ran into the wall and got hurt real bad? What would have happened if he hit the wall and his car got on fire? That's where I kind of draw the line in. I mean, I understand where, you know, fans really enjoy that kind of race. You know, there was a, you know, very exciting finish. You know, certainly a lot of people are talking that way, that, you know, they really enjoyed the finish like you're saying you did. But, you know, maybe I'm being Debbie Downer in this, but I always have to draw a line when there's intentional contact. I mean, if it's contact that is, you know, kind of inherent with racing for the lead, that's one thing. But when somebody comes up behind you and intentionally rams you in the rear end, that to me is intentional. That's where I kind of draw the line. That's kind of like if you and I are driving down the freeway and somebody, you know, who doesn't like the fact that we're, you know, maybe 5 miles over the limit, they want us to go faster, they'll ram us in the rear end. That's intentional contact. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. Yeah, it was an exciting finish, yeah. You know, it was a great race to watch on TV, but that's kind of where I draw the line, is that, you know, Busch intentionally rammed Larson, and, you know, luckily it was just, you know, he spun him, but it still, that's the kind of way I saw it.
Well, I think there's a lot of difference between, you know, going on the freeway and going on the racetrack, for one thing, Jerry Bonkowski. But I would just say, isn't this, though, why we love stock car racing? I mean, this is what you hear about here. It's like, oh, the open wheels, you don't have the grinding of the fenders, and you don't have the punching and all this. Wasn't this sort of driving why everyone had an opinion on Dale Earnhardt back in the day? I mean, to me, I could not remember, for me, a finish that it captured me as much. Not since at least Derek Cope was right there to get the underdog Daytona 500 victory in 1990 after Earnhardt blew out a tire. Excuse me. But and it was, of course, totally different and different storyline there. But isn't this what stock car racing is all about, Jerry Bonkowski?
Well, it is. My personal opinion, and maybe I'm not saying I'm wrong, I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm not saying other people are wrong the way they interpret it, but to me, I just have a problem when the contact is intentional. I mean, if it's incidental, that's one thing, but when you have a guy come up right behind you and just, you know, ram you right in the back end, I mean, where do you draw the line in a situation like that? You know what I'm saying?
No, I do. I also think it may be because you're more of a motorsports writer with NHRA and Indy and so on and so forth. You can read all of Jerry Bonkowski's stuff on NBCSports.com. And I think that there are a lot of fans around here that aren't necessarily, quote unquote, motorsports fans, even though Bristol provides a lot of motorsports activities. But, you know, we always hear that, why did NASCAR become more popular than Indy? And I mean, I remember the days of, I don't remember, but I've read about the days when, Cale Yarborough goes to the IndyCar circuit and returns to NASCAR because he's not good enough to compete with those IndyCar drivers. That's what was said back in the 70s. And that's a million years ago, I do understand. But things have changed now, and, people think now, I've always felt that maybe the best drivers are there because there's the contact, and how do you handle it? And the fact that Busch could go into the wall and still win the race, and all that. That was what really impressed me. And also, I got to tell you this, I remember last year when I asked you about your home track of Chicagoland, and it had been ranked by one writer as the worst track on the NASCAR circuit. I love this sort of action, this sort of, fender bending, if you will, even more than the famous Earnhardt-Labonte rivalry back in the 90s because there was more room. I thought that it meant, it was more visual that way, and that there was, more action and the slipping and sliding. To me, I said, if anybody has a problem with the Chicagoland track, unless they were in the race and just water, you couldn't after that race. I mean, I thought Chicagoland proved itself as a wonderful racetrack on this day. That was my take. Let me ask you. Yes.
It is a good track. There's no question about that. But, Marky, going back to what I was saying, maybe this might help further back up my argument. I mean, and I'm not arguing per se, but what I'm getting at is this. That was for the win. The contact was for the win. Busch intentionally rammed Larson, pushes him on the way, goes on to the win. But then let's look at all the races we've had, let's say over the last 5 to 10 years. How many times have we seen guys who, got into a wreck or, had intentional contact with another car, and then the other car comes around and retaliates and, wrecks the car, puts them in the wall, whatever you want to call it. NASCAR penalizes people for that. So to me, that's almost like a dual-edged sword. I mean, if you're hit by somebody else, and then you turn around and retaliate and hit that person and put them in the wall or something, you're going to get penalized for this. That's what I'm getting at. I mean, I get that it's an exciting finish, but I just, again, I have this thing about intentional contact, personal thing. That's I guess that's a good example. One of the best examples I can give you.
I understand that. By the way, Kyle Busch beating out Kyle Larson, is Kyle Petty going to make a comeback?
I don't think so.
We have the Kyle 500. I think that would be quite intriguing and would get some people. By the way, what I gotta admit, after I'm watching a race, after I'm watching the post race on TV, I gotta tell you, there was a blonde behind Kyle Busch, and I wasn't really paying that much attention to what he was saying, but reading the newspaper today, he is talking about whining NASCAR fans, kind of like what you're saying, you're receiving jeers and all this. Now, I almost hate to say this because it indicates that, you can't be the gracious winner or something like that and have attention, that you have to have friction. But isn't this healthy friction with Busch knocking his critics, in your opinion? Or what do you think about Kyle Busch hitting back at the quote-unquote whining NASCAR fans?
Well, there's a couple of ways to answer that. Number one, Kyle's known for his reactions. He's a very emotional, very interjecting type of guy when it comes to fans booing him. He understands why they're booing him. So a lot of times he'll play to that, and that's what he did yesterday. The fans were booing him because I'm sure many of them felt much like I did that by wrecking Larson or hitting him in the rear end and shoving him out of the way, they felt that it was not kosher, if you will. And that's one of the reasons why he was so many people fans were booing him. The other thing too is that this is a situation where he is one of the most popular drivers, but he's also one of the drivers that fans like to boo at. It's a kind of a love-hate relationship. It's like guys, other drivers in the past. There were fans out there that didn't like a Jeff Gordon. There were fans out there that didn't like a Tony Stewart. So it's kind of the same situation. But Kyle, he kind of likes to play
I think it was healthy because I think that in motorsports you need personality. I think that that's what attracts you to rooting for a driver. I mean, there are a lot of different appeals to motorsports. You know, it's not like, oh, we all live in Tennessee, we're going to root for the Volunteers. Oh, we all live in Chicago, we're going to all root for the Bears. It's not, you know, that. It's a lot of, I pick up on this. And maybe you do pick up on, I don't know, a Mike Potter because he's from Johnson City and you hope he does well when back in the day when he'd go into the Daytona 500 or something like that. But barring, I'm sure Kannapolis loved Dale Earnhardt, you know, that sort of thing. But generally speaking, it's going to be, you know, maybe the make, although I think that's getting a little bit away from now. And you know, kind of the personality of the driver. I think there's what guys, you know, sort of attribute themselves or has the appeal. And that's one of the reasons, you know, they keep trying to promote personality. Well, here we go, Kyle Busch. And, you know, healthy friction, I think this could be today. One of the things, though, that impressed me is the stage racing. And even though Busch wins again, and he's got 5 victories, Harvick wins the second stage. He's got 5 victories this year. You know, what do you think of his performance at the race? I was impressed by Harvick being able to win a portion just as, well, maybe not just as much, but in addition to Busch's eventual victory.
Well, he's one of the best drivers out there, so it's not really that much of a surprise to me that Harvick, you know, won stage 2. But, you know, remember, I don't think a lot of the drivers really got the stage system at the outset, but over the last couple of years, they know now that every point is valuable, every stage win is valuable, and that's why, you know, you look at a race, kind of like 3 races in one. You got the first 2 stages, and then, of course, you have the checkered flag. So, you know, any way you can get some extra points by winning a stage is very important. That's what Kevin Harvick showed to us yesterday, and it's not just the first time he's done it, you know, consistently, not only this year, but the last couple of years as well, too.
Well, we're talking to Jerry Bonkowski of NBCSports.com. He was at the race. Well, forgive me for this open-ended question. I mean, I know there's a lot of ways it could go, but what was it like there yesterday? We know it was hot. We know it was an exciting finish for at least me, even if you had a little bit of your, you know, I can understand that. The moonshiner knocking the sheriff into the pond. Well, hopefully the sheriff gets out. We don't really want him to have harm, you know. I do understand that. But what was it like at the track yesterday?
Well, first of all, I think it was, you know, there was no what's the word I'm looking for? You couldn't avoid the biggest part of the whole race was not the race itself, but the heat. It was very hot for fans, very hot for drivers. A lot of drivers, they had like 150-degree temperatures in their cars, so that was the biggest thing. But, you know, the fans that showed up, they were very, they saw a very good show. They got their money's worth, in my opinion.
Could the date of this race change? Because after Chicago, July, hot, it used to be September when it was a little bit more comfortable. Could this race go back into the playoff field at all?
I don't see that happening anytime soon. I mean, I think that, you know, the way that NASCAR changed the schedule, I think Chicagoland is definitely going to be locked into this date, you know, for at least the next 5 years, probably at least or more.
Let me ask you another question here. We got July 4th on a Wednesday. Now, of course, normally, you know, NASCAR is always going to have their races on the weekend, the Cup on Sunday, unless, you know, the Saturday night Bristol. I guess Daytona next week, that's going to be a Saturday night as well. But it's on a weekend is what I'm trying to say. Has there ever been any conversation about maybe having a July 4th race? I mean, everybody gets the day off, and it would be a fun thing to do on a July 4th is to watch this distinctly American sport of NASCAR. Has that ever been discussed?
Well, I mean, I think that it's actually being discussed more and more frequently over the last couple of years. And there's a lot of discussion about midweek races. And, you know, we could potentially see a midweek race as early as next year. I'm not saying we're going to, but, you know, there's been a lot of discussion about that. And the thing is, you know, if you're going to have a midweek race, A, it has to be a good TV race, you know, a good one for TV. B, it has to be at a place where fans are going to come and flock to. And to me, what better place to do that than would be Daytona for the summer race? They're fourth, well,
Sure, I do understand that. Daytona obviously would be tourist draw. I don't know. I was thinking if you were going to do July 4th, I said, why not Dover or Pocono just because of their proximity to Philly? But it's a little bit of a reach because Dover really isn't Philly. Pocono really isn't Philly. They're close, but they're not. You're not going to be at Independence Hall and hear the revs of the engine, that sort of thing. It's not like the Phillies playing a doubleheader on July 4th or something. That's.
Yeah, but remember one thing though. I mean, Pocono is about maybe 90 miles from New York City, so that draws a lot of fans in that area. And then Dover is probably 150 miles from New York, so there is a potential to draw a lot of fans from the biggest market of all. But the thing though that's most important is if NASCAR is going to do this, they've got to get it right the first time. There's no do-overs. I mean, if they pick a track, let's say like a Pocono or a Dover for a midweek race, and the fans don't turn out for various reasons, either they have to be at work or they're on vacation somewhere else or whatever the case may be, then it makes it's a bad reflection to have a midweek race that doesn't draw a lot of fans. So you've got to be very careful if you're going to have a midweek race on where you're going to have it at. And like I said a moment ago, to me the most logical one would be Daytona because even though it's typically on a Saturday night down in Daytona, it still draws a lot of fans and it draws a lot of fans who are on vacation. So that to me is the most logical place to try and at least try it for once. But now the thing is, we won't have another Wednesday 4th of July for another 6 years, I guess it is, if you include the leap year. So we may not see a midweek race for another 6 years perhaps.
Okay, yeah, that's and Daytona. I mean, it's centrally located in the country's fourth most populated state. So yeah, although I threw out there just because if it was a midweek race on an Independence Day, the proximity to Philly, D.C. or something. Just with this, and also New York. What you're saying, I mean, that's a couple hours drive. It's not that far away for your day off. I would point this out on how close Dover is. Delaware is just tiny. And so Dover's got to be close to Wilmington. And when I was a kid, when my mom went to Bryn Mawr, and I was a kid in first grade, I would watch PBS. Yes, Mr. Rogers, Sesame Street, that sort of thing, off of the channel in Wilmington. Philly's PBS station was in Wilmington. Now ours is in Sneedville, and don't ask me where Sneedville is because I could tell you, but it would take the rest of the show here, Jerry Bonkowski. But no, the point, you get the point what I'm trying to make. I mean, Delaware was considered Philly Metro. So, is what I'm pointing out to in that case. So would it work? Who knows? I mean, you got to do some feasibility studies and all that. I know Daytona's going to work out, and there'll probably be some crashes with the restrictor plates coming up. So if you like the finish last week or yesterday, and boy, do I hope that NASCAR can build off of that finish, because I'll tell you what, I thought that was a moment. I thought that was Dwight Clark catching the touchdown. I thought that was Havlicek stealing the ball, or Chris Chambliss winning the pennant for the first time for the Yankees with his walk-off home run, or what have you. I really enjoyed that, even if it was a little unsafe. Jerry Bonkowski, look forward to talking to you next time. I will be giving you, what do I got up here? You know what? I've got some more Vols news, and also what is going on at David Crockett High School. More of that on Tri-City Sports Now.
You're looking for Crabtree Buick.
Yes, we have a David